My name is Michael, and if you're hearing this, it means I finally won. But before you see the fire, you have to see the ashes, because my story isn't about easy victories, it's about betrayal that stripped me bare, about loss that nearly killed me, and about revenge born not from fists or fury, but from success so undeniable it crushed the people who once tried to bury me. I was never born into privilege. My father worked long hours in a steel factory, his hands calloused, his lungs blackened by the smoke of machines that never slept. My mother cleaned other people's homes, polishing marble floors, scrubbing bathrooms she'd never be allowed to use, folding clothes that cost more than our rent. We weren't starving, but we lived on the edge of it. There were nights when dinner was bread and canned soup, and mornings when I'd see my mother quietly crying into her hands, praying I wouldn't notice. I noticed everything. From the very beginning, I swore to myself I wouldn't live like that forever. I wanted to break the cycle, to be more than survival. Books became my refuge, numbers, ideas, technology, they became my escape from a reality that felt like a trap. My parents used to say, "Michael, if you work hard, the world will reward you," and I believed them. God, I believed them. College was supposed to be my fresh start. I was the first in my family to attend, carrying their hopes on my shoulders like armor. That's where I met Ethan and Chris. If I was the quiet one, they were the loud, magnetic ones, the kind of guys who could walk into a room and own it without trying. They dressed sharp, spoke with confidence, and seemed to know everyone worth knowing. At first, I envied them, but then they pulled me in. We studied together, partied together, built projects for classes, and even sketched out ideas for businesses on napkins at 2 a.m., in cheap diners. I thought I'd found my brothers. They told me we'd take on the world together, that we'd prove everyone wrong, and for years, I clung to that dream. I trusted them with everything, my time, my ideas, my loyalty. What I didn't know was that they were sharpening their knives. After graduation, when most of our classmates were stumbling into low-paying jobs or grad school debt, I came up with something that felt like lightning in a bottle, an app designed to help small businesses, family-owned shops that always got crushed by chains, manage logistics and cut costs. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. It could change lives. I coded for nights without sleep, knocking on doors by day, convincing owners to test it out. Slowly, it began working. People loved it. Ethan and Chris watched me closely. They offered to help, claiming they had contacts with investors. "Let us handle the business side," they said. "You focus on the code. You're the brains, Mike. We'll be the voice." I believed them. I wish I hadn't. The night that shattered me is burned into my memory. I walked into what I thought was a strategy meeting, our meeting, but when I stepped inside, Ethan and Chris were already seated across from venture capitalists, smiling like kings, presenting my app, my code, my pitch deck, as if it was theirs. I froze in the doorway, my stomach churning. When I confronted them later, they didn't flinch. Ethan leaned back in his chair, his smile slick. "You're smart, Mike, but you're not a leader. Investors don't buy into guys who mumble into their laptops. They buy vision, charisma. You don't have that." Chris smirked. "You should be grateful. Without us, your little basement project dies in obscurity. Stick with us, and maybe we'll toss you a piece of the pie." My throat tightened. My so-called brothers had gutted me alive and smiled while they twisted the knife. I walked away that night shaking with rage, and just when I thought it couldn't get worse, they sued me. Imagine the audacity, two thieves accusing the man they stole from. They claimed I'd stolen their intellectual property, parading forged documents and lies into courtrooms where I couldn't even afford proper defense. Judges dismissed me, investors ignored me, the world turned its back. Within months, I was penniless, my reputation, ruined, my dream, stolen. Do you know what it feels like to walk down the street and see your creation on billboards, your code powering businesses, but your name erased from existence? It feels like standing at your own funeral and watching strangers cheer. I spiraled. I drowned myself in whiskey that tasted like gasoline, slept on a couch so old the springs stabbed my back. I stopped answering my parents' calls because I couldn't bear the disappointment in their voices. My mother's son, the one who was supposed to break the cycle, had become a ghost haunting the ruins of his own dream. For a long time, I thought about giving up. I thought maybe Ethan and Chris were right, that I was just a grinder, not a leader. Maybe I was destined to fade out, forgotten. But then one night, sitting alone with a broken laptop and a bottle half empty, it hit me. They had taken everything, but they hadn't taken me. They hadn't taken my mind. They hadn't taken my fire. I decided if they wanted me gone, I'd become the ghost that haunted them. For the next 3 years, I disappeared. By day, I worked odd jobs, warehouse loader, delivery driver, night shift security, anything to scrape by. By night, I built. I studied business strategy, marketing psychology, finance. I coded until my fingertips cramped. Every failure became fuel, every insult, a hammer forging me sharper. I wasn't just creating another app, I was building an empire they couldn't steal. The turning point came when I met Olivia. She owned a small coffee shop, struggling against a chain that opened 2 blocks away. Her eyes carried the same desperation I'd seen in my parents'. I offered her a free prototype of my system. Within weeks, her costs dropped, her profits grew, and she started to breathe again. Word spread, 1 shop turned into 5, 5 turned into 50, a network of small businesses, real people, put their trust in me. This time, I didn't run to investors. Every cent I made went back into growth. While Ethan and Chris posed for magazine covers and partied on yachts, I was grinding in silence, brick by brick, laying a foundation so strong no storm could shake it. Then the market shifted. Chains that once suffocated local businesses began collapsing under economic pressure. Guess who had the solution every struggling shop needed? Me. My company exploded. In less than a year, I went from paycheck to signing contracts worth millions. And then came the sweetest moment of all. I was invited to speak at a major business summit, the same stage where Ethan and Chris were scheduled to present their company, my stolen company. Backstage, I watched them strut out in tailored suits, flashing smiles, bragging about innovation they never created. Cameras flashed, the crowd applauded, and for a moment, they basked in their illusion of power. Then it was my turn. I walked out, lights blinding, air electric. When I began speaking, I saw their faces pale, because the crowd wasn't just hearing about another company, they were hearing the truth. I laid out my journey, my innovations, the empire I'd built from scratch. I showed the numbers, the partnerships, the growth that dwarfed theirs. I didn't need to name them, everyone in the room already knew. By the time I finished, the applause shook the walls. Ethan and Chris sat frozen, exposed, irrelevant. In that moment, they weren't leaders, they weren't visionaries, they were thieves, watching the man they buried rise higher than they ever dreamed. That's the thing about revenge. It doesn't come from shouting or swinging fists, it comes from standing so tall that those who tried to break you can't even look you in the eye anymore. Today, I own offices in cities I used to only see in movies. My parents no longer clean houses or break their backs in factories, they live in comfort because I made sure of it. Olivia runs her coffee chain with my system powering it, and me, I wake up every morning knowing the scars I carry aren't marks of defeat, but proof I survived the fire. So if you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever had your dreams stolen, if you've ever felt buried alive by the world, listen to me, you are not finished. Your enemies don't get the final word, you do. And if my story lit even a spark in you, if you felt that fire stirring in your chest, don't let it die here. Subscribe, stay with me, because I've got more than stories. I've got battles, scars, and victories to share. Together, we're going to rise higher than they ever thought we could. Because the best revenge is success.